All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the beginning of our August series. And in that regard, as always, you may wish to scan the surface of the piano there for additional information. We have, of course, our own flyer for August present there in this yellow color, but we also have a flyer that somebody just brought over from the Philosophical Research Society, indicating that on the 32nd anniversary of his passing into the greater life, or at least the day before, I shall give a lecture on Mr. Manly Hall at the PR Philosophical Research Society, and I assure you that the material will be appreciably different from the ones that I presented here, and we have done now similar events at PRS from some years, always at this time, and it will be on a Wednesday evening, and certainly any of you who are able to come will be welcome, and it should be a nice event. In addition to that, let's see, what other things do I have? We will also have a special and unusual ecclesiastical event here now on a Thursday evening, as we did a few times, and this one is on Thursday, August 18th at 7:30, which will be connected with the Feast of the Assumption of Sophia or Mary or whoever your favorite feminine deific figure is. That's the one that we will celebrate. With that, I'll proceed to this evening's talk, which also is the first in a series. And as is customary to people of a certain age, I will recount a little, I will reminisce a little bit to begin with. And my reminiscence concerns my first encounter, not in the flesh, because I think the age discrepancy was much too great, but in imagery and in the spirit, my first encounter with Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. I was in the Austrian Alps, having recently departed my own country as the result of the communist tyranny therein, and particularly there was a summer which I would say was probably the summer of 1949 or thereabouts, when I didn't have much to do. School was out, and I was there in the beautiful alpine surroundings, but I wanted to read on subjects that interested me vitally, and so I ordered some books by mail, owing to the fact also that those wonderful promoters of culture, the Nazis, had destroyed practically all esoteric and occult literature in the German language, and it was very difficult to come by. However, I had some sources, and some of the books arrived, and among them was one which I never heard of before, and there are probably some German speakers here, so I mean this was in the German language, of course, and it was a book entitled Wie ich mein Selbst fand, How I Found Myself, by Helene von Schewitsch, whom I didn't know from Adam, and then subsequently inquired a little further, and what I found there was a personal account along with a good deal of theoretical information, ultimately proceeding from Madame Blavatsky, which this particular lady, who was a very distinguished figure in European society, Helene von Schewitsch, she was married to a Romanian Prince Rakovica, and had become quite famous, particularly in esoteric circles. And therein I read about her meeting this strange, heavy-set, but tremendously impressive Russian woman, H.P. Blavatsky. And after I finished that particular book, I had an experience which was probably similar to that to some others, certainly to my friend, the theosophical historian Michael Gomes in New York, that I was in love with Madame Blavatsky, with Madame Blavatsky's image, with her spirit for the rest of my life. So that was the beginning of a long association, a long spiritual association with someone whom I increasingly began to discover as a far more important figure of spiritual history than most people assume. And so I became associated with the society that she founded, and eventually when I came here to America, I found myself in this particular lodge of the Theosophical Society, wherein, as well as in other places, I continue to pay attention particularly to the figure and to the message of Madame Blavatsky, of the foundress, and in the course of that interest I discovered that in all likelihood we are really confronted here with a much more culturally and spiritually significant figure than perhaps most people, including her followers, imagined. And it is for that reason that I once again turned my attention to her and wanted to convey some insights and some thoughts to you that I may not have done, at least not for a very long time. I'll start with a quotation from the great Persian prophet, Gnostic prophet Mani, to whom I shall return again, at least to his tradition, in a few minutes, who is quoted as having said in part, and here is the quotation, "Wisdom and good deeds have always from time to time been brought to mankind by messengers of God." And then he lists several, one biblical and others from the history of religion, Seth El, Buddha, Zarathustra, Jesus, and finally in a lesser manner by himself, by Mani. Now what this, and I will read more Manichaean material in a minute, what this particular quotation indicates, that we are dealing here really with much more than mere 19th century figure within the esoteric tradition who was quite controversial in her own time and who was much reviled at various times, but who nevertheless founded not only a society, the Theosophical Society, which she, along with others, especially the American Civil War Colonel Henry Steele Olcott, founded in 1875 in New York City, and which became a very important hub and center of the esoteric tradition thereafter, but that this person also, or primarily, may be regarded as part of a chain of prophetic figures throughout history, whom, if we investigate the matter thoroughly, we will recognize as having been the enunciators and the advocates of a particular tradition, the esoteric tradition, as we call it, and who apparently from time to time appeared in history. So we are not dealing here merely with the 19th century adventuress from Russia, as a lot of people called her, but we are dealing with a human manifestation of a transcendental impulse to inspire and to inform humanity along particular lines, to create, which was actually one of her expressions, and I have used it here and there before with apologies to the source, who was to create, as indeed such people often do, was to create a new continent of the spirit, a new continent of thought, very much paralleling on its own plane, as it were, of the new country, the new continent, in the midst of which she came and founded her effort to bring a certain kind of message, a certain kind of enlightenment to humanity, which has really remained with us ever since. With this kind of introduction, let me indicate what we may be really approaching here. In order to appreciate a phenomenon such as Madame Blavatsky and her work in a worthy and proper fashion, it may be helpful to have a little theoretical, become aware of a little theoretical framework of the larger scheme into which this figure fits. And what we are dealing with here is, first of all, the esoteric worldview, that in German we call Weltanschauung, Kosmokonzeption, as Max Heindel called it, which has certain very distinctive features that are not generally known in the intellectual or even spiritual history of the world. And we need to envision a vast and supremely alive scene, a cosmic and transcosmic reality which extends at the bottom from the very physical earth wherein we live into the invisible realms, into all, I would say, almost a world without end. So from the world with an end onto the world without end. And in the world without end there are centers of consciousness. And these centers of consciousness have certain purposes. They have certain plans. And in order to realize these purposes and to have these plans manifest, they need to bring forth and to emanate, as the expression has it, what has been called messengers. You know, messenger is also the word that the Greek word angelos translates to, that an angel is a messenger. So let's say the idea of messengership of certain souls being sent forth from a high and holy source in order to bring some of that holiness and wisdom and understanding and transcendental intuition to the consciousness of humans. This is a very important spiritual fact. As Rudolf Steiner would call it in sonorous German, eine geistige Tatsache, a spiritual fact, you know. And once again, I am not here to convert you to a belief in such recondite matters, but I am indicating that these ideas and others associated with them are the real framework within which the person and the activities of someone like Madame Blavatsky find their place. It is evident to me now, in spite of my almost lifelong interest in and involvement with the figure of Madame Blavatsky, that she was such a messenger whose message was of immense importance, and that message still continues to bear spiritual fruit in humanity, and that I need to say that right now, because much of my subsequent, speaking of messengers and messages, my subsequent message is very much connected with this notion that what these beings who come out of the great mystery and then convey various important portions of that mystery, convey the messages that these persons are in many ways the salt of the earth, as the Bible would call it. Namely, in the words of Jesus when he says to his disciples, you are the salt of the earth, and if you are not here, then life loses its savor. And if you ever try to live on a saltless diet, fortunately I never sunk to that kind of benighted behavior. But let's say if you do deprive your body by way of the deprivation of the palate of salt, then I know what I'm talking about. It's entirely different when there is a flavor, a spice to life. And I suggest that the supreme spice of life is from beyond this world. We pursue various spices that we hope would make our life more lively, more exciting, more pleasurable, and so forth, because we have an intuition that there are such qualities, and that the ordinary life that we lead in ordinary humanity is not sufficient for that. That maybe the physical circumstances of our lives are interesting, are helpful. In many cases, we might say that we have to be satisfied with them because they are the only life we've got, but that at the same time there is needed in our lives something that will give it a savor, something that will give it a spice. And it is a spice that cannot be described. But I have a feeling that since you have come to this place, not only tonight but in other nights, and since you obviously have interests along these lines, that in some fashion you know what I mean. If we didn't have our transcendental interest, if we didn't have that active longing for a meaning that is beyond this world, even though it can manifest in this world, this life would be worth very little. But as long as we have that, the attraction to that ineffable mystery, which is here, although often seldom to recognize, and which is the essence of the true meaning. You know, I think C.G. Jung pointed out that to approach meaning in our existence, the best way is not to do what we so often do, and which is kind of the common thing to do, is to seek the meaning of life. But that what you should seek is, you should ask the question, not what is the meaning of life, but what is the meaning of my life. And when you do that, then you sort of open up that celestial salt shaker, since I use this metaphor, and then somehow the spice falls into our lives and makes it palatable, makes it increasingly delightful, and also increases our desire to lead that life because of that mysterious and often elusive and yet ever-present meaning that is there. And if I can be a little bit personal again, let us say from that time in the high Alps, on the shore of the lake of Hallstatt in Upper Austria, something came into my life that never left. It may have been obscured at times. There were, in fact, I can confess to it just recently, within the last few years, sometimes when that meaning became very obscured, when often the great hope seemed to recede, but somehow it was always there. And this meaning of one life out of many, was brought into fruition and was nourished throughout the many years of a life to a very great extent by the person whom I truly regard the messenger of many centuries, of many ages, not only of the 19th century when she lived her short but fruitful life, but whose influence on the spiritual history of the world was and continues to be a very, very important one. And just to give you a little more of an impression of what this sort of messengership means, I'll read to you a set of quotations, which I already read one little one of the latest of the great Gnostic prophets, Mani of Babylonia, which refers specifically to this messengership. Let me read a couple of these paragraphs, if you don't mind. I don't like to generally do too much quoting. The Maninaya, this is now in ancient Persian, the religious history is seen as a perpetual series of revelations to diverse peoples across the world. These revelations coming in the form of a messenger of the divine, who provides the pure teaching, the divine knowledge required to liberation of souls from the illusion of matter. These deific messengers are all facets of one author who is, this is now in the old mythology, Mithra, and I'll tell you more. He is often referred to as the third messenger. It is he who has continually sought to awaken souls and bring them to the kingdom of lights, an eternal realm beyond the physical universe. Now, Mithra is a deity, an esoteric deity of ancient Persia. He has often been referred to as the Lord of Time, who brings light and who brings meaning into the time realm. He's usually represented as having a human body with the face of a lion. In the latter part of the Roman Empire, the worship reverence accorded to Mithra became very large and very popular, particularly among the Roman legions. If you travel around Europe, you come to various places where the antiquarians will show you a place that is, they usually say, well, come and see our Mithraeum. These are the places of worship of Mithra, which mostly consists of an underground chamber, and wherein the initiations of Mithra were conferred. Very awesome looking figure. If you go to Rome, where of course you expect to find all the Christian and Catholic symbolism, and justly so. If you go to the Vatican Museum, as almost everybody does, right at where you enter the door to the museum itself and come to one room after the other of the museum, you will see a statue, not quite as tall as a human, but maybe about half as high as a man, with his hand, with his paw extended in the air and with the face of the lion. Mitra welcomes you to the Vatican Museum. Isn't that something? It shows you that the ancients were right. The gods never die. We do, but the gods don't. And moreover, they return in manifestation in various ways. So let's say the ancient Persians, of whom of course Mani was one, felt that as this celestial being, the Lord of Time, Mitra, was the source of messengership, and that he would send his manifestations, his children, the lesser messengers into the world. Here is also another direct quotation from one of Mani's writings, the Kurusutta Marmani. During the decline of the pure teaching, in the days of darkness, in the days when the corruption of religion becomes a disease in the bones of the religious sects, a man of truth and righteousness shall appear, being sent down from the kingdom of lights into the world of matter. It is this human who shall take great concern for the assembly according to the powers of the Great Spirit within him and to his capacity as one who inhabits a physical body. And these statements go on and on about the messenger of the gods. Now, this is important to keep in mind, because while, as I have indicated in some of the earlier talks, I think we are justified in accepting the idea that there has been an esoteric tradition. There has been a tradition of transcendence in the world from the beginning of the time when there were humans on this earth. Were it not for these periodic outpourings of vivifying energy, energy in thought, energy in feeling, energy in intuition, energy in transcendental experience, the holy tradition would have perished on the earth. See, it's a very wonderful thing to contemplate, that in a very profound spiritual sense, we have never been left alone. Oh yes, the old spiritual probably is right that says that sometimes I feel like a motherless child. But we are not really motherless. We are not really fatherless. We are not without a living connection with an incredible reality. A reality that we couldn't imagine if we tried, but which is nevertheless there. And this reality in turn has a desire. It has a longing. And that desire, that longing is to come to us and to give us meaning. Infuse us with a transcendental energy which, when it has come to us, at least on and off, we can honestly say, yes, my life has meaning. And that meaning has been stimulated, has been brought into effective existence by way of the activities of the messenger. Now it is some will probably feel that maybe I'm engaging in hyperbole, that I am exalting an influence and a person to a degree that is not justified, but I think it is justified. Because if you look at the spiritual history of the world, the latter part of the 19th century was a time that was ready for that kind of an infusion. And if we look even at the present time, at the various manifestations, the branches, the tributaries of the esoteric tradition, we can see that they all seem to converge in the figure of a strange Russian woman, although, as I think I mentioned before, I will not forego the occasion without saying that when she was in this country, she became an American citizen. So the two great guardians who were like the two pillars of the Temple of Solomon, Boaz and Jachin, who came and held up the temple of the esoteric tradition. H.P. Blavatsky and her faithful follower and friend Henry Steele Olcott were both American citizens. One, of course, a Connecticut Yankee, Olcott, in Providence, not in any event, there are streets still named after the Olcott family in various cities in that part of the country. Old Yankee family with a great big beard and usually having his cigar in his mouth, but also a dedication, a devotion, an unshakable faith in the messenger with whom he was associated, and then the messenger herself. And the effort in the outward sense began here in the United States, as I mentioned before. And all of this, I think, is of considerable importance. But now comes the truly important thing, which I'm going to reiterate, hopefully not to your ongoing annoyance after several times, namely that what is it that the messenger really brings? What is it that this particular messenger so desperately and at such incredible sacrifices to herself was trying to bring to us? Even though her chef-d'oeuvre, as it rightfully was regarded, and I'll certainly say more about that, came to be entitled The Secret Doctrine, what she brought was not a doctrine. No. The essence of the esoteric tradition is not a teaching. It is not a series of theories whereby we can try to explain to ourselves the ups and downs, the joys and the vicissitudes of our life, and they say, aha, there it is. See, this comes from my last incarnation, and this, that, and the other thing. Not that sort of thing. It's not something that helps you to explain life, but rather it brings you the meaning of life. That is not the same. An explanation is not a meaning, although much of the time in this world that's what we do. I want to find out what this means. Explain it to me. you know. But an explanation is confined to certain levels or certain regions of the human psyche, which can only go so far. At best, they can penetrate the thinking function of the mind, as it is called in depth psychology. But beyond that, they cannot go. But what we need is a ladder, a stairway, like the stairway that Jacob saw in his dream, upon which the angels ascend and descend. You know, that scene in the Jacob's dream. That is the true foundation of the country of Israel. You think that the true foundation was after World War II? No. It goes clear back then, because Jacob sees the angels ascending and descending on the ladder, and then he hears the word that the mystical words that really explain to him that this is indeed the Bethel, the house of God. And it's that house of God that the Jewish people have never let go of. Exiles and diaspora and persecutions and Holocausts, but they always knew that they were told that there is a house of God where the angels rise and where the angels descend. So that's the kind of thing that we need. We need a stairway upon which, step by step, we can move to transcendence, to the real, to that which is not subject to destruction, not subject to misunderstanding, not subject to neurosis and psychosis, not subject to the abominable politics of this world, about which Jesus says, give to Caesar what belongs to him and then go, you know. If necessary, go to Washington, D.C. and give it to Caesar. Yeah. In any event, that didn't go over great, but I thought it was somewhat funny. Because in any event, we don't have to pursue that further. But let's say once we are able to detach ourselves from the physical and intellectual and emotional convolutions of our external lives, then we are reaching our own interior spiritual Israel, the land of transcendence. But what does this mean? It doesn't mean a theory. It doesn't mean a theology. It doesn't mean a Torah and the Mishnah and the Talmud and the New Testament and the Old Testament, but it is something else. It means an interior, transforming, indelible experience of transcendence within our nature. So the messengers bring experience. They bring the inducement to individual transformation, to the transformative experience. They come to indicate to us means whereby we can step out of this human personality and step into something greater, something truly meaningful, something truly magnificent. And moreover, something that if we once experienced it, even in a strange passing way, then we have received a treasure that we will never lose. we will have a grail, which, like Parsifal coming from the castle, we will carry with us. That is the real work of the messenger. Now you can wonder and ask inward questions to me. You know, I always loved those cartoons that used to be around. I haven't seen them in a long time, where you have a bunch of people, and then there are these little balloons coming out of their heads, and in the balloon are their observations, their questions, usually pretty stupid things, because after all that's what people would produce, you know. But they have these questions that are up there, which then I try to address. But let us say the important thing to remember is therefore that the messengers, whether they were Mani, whether they were Madame Blavatsky, whether they were various others in between, the messengers were trying to lead those who were willing to be led to the experience of the ineffable greatness that they are capable of now. Not a distant heaven, not how did one of these preachers who was so funny, Reverend Ike, used to say, you know, remember Reverend Ike? He was so much fun, you know, say, not the pie in the sky by and by when you die, you know, not something like that, but something that is very, very possible, very, very important, and without which life is not what it could be and not what it should be. Now, this being the case, let's return to Madame Blavatsky, born in 1831, which is easy for me to remember because it's 100 years before my birth. Born in 1831 in Yekaterinslav in Russia, which is actually very much on in the border area of what now would be called Ukraine, but I'm sorry to tell you, whatever the media tell you, there was no Ukraine in those days, because there were initially, I'll just throw that in because it's at the present time it's really very important, you know. Historically there were two Russias associated with each other, and they were called the Little Rus and the Big Rus. The Little Rus had Kiev as its center. The Big Rus had Moscow as its center. And that the Ukrainians are right in that respect, that at one time Kiev was of very, very great importance. And that is where the Prince of Kiev, Saint Vladimir, brought Christianity to. That's where the first Christian missionaries from Byzantium came and really created the Russian Orthodox Church. But, you know, whenever you have something interesting and good going, you may be assured that a fly will appear in the ointment. And now we got a great big fly over there. But let's say the fly in this case was a bunch of people who initially once, probably around 1200, totally devastated my homeland, namely Hungary, and these were the Mongols, also often called the Tartars. And the Mongols sort of settled down around near the Black Sea there, because it was a lot warmer there, but they would several times a year come up north and make terrible raids on both the Little Rus and the Bigger Rus, but primarily the Little Rus or Ukraine, because that was closer to them. They didn't have to ride on their little horses too far. And what happened was that as the result of the ongoing onslaught of these raids upon the country there, the country was devastated. The people, a very large number of the people were killed off. And the importance of Little Rus or Kiev, lest you think that I have left Madame Blavatsky somewhere in the away now, I haven't really. Why? Because what was the Grand Principality of Kiev for a very long time, and of which the most prominent member was Saint Vladimir, who brought Orthodoxy to Russia. The family of the Grand Princess of Kiev, as the importance of Kiev and Ukraine sort of declined, the princely family who were the relatives and the descendants of the Grand Prince Vladimir and others was still there. And they are known as the Princess Dolgoruki. They are the descendants of the original rulers of Little Rus. Now, it so happens that the maternal grandmother of Madame Blavatsky was Princess Helena Dolgoruki of that family. Now you may say, so what? Let's say I think the distinguished lineage and the contacts that lineage afforded to her were of very great importance in her career. Anyway, as quite a young person, even though she contracted an ill-advised and facetious marriage to a general and vice governor of one of the provinces, Nikifor Blavatsky, whom she left right after that, and obviously her calling was not to be a mother or a grandmother of a family. Let us say the connections and the relations, the many relations that she had in Russia and so forth, of very important people, became quite useful to her subsequently. In any event, there are many biographical or partial biographical books about Blavatsky. Many of you probably have read them already or will do so at some point. But the important thing is that as a very young woman, she left Russia and traveled around in the world. We don't even know where she had gotten, although it's quite likely that in her travels she did come to at least the periphery of the land of Tibet and made certain contacts there. And subsequently, when having gathered a number of people around her, in 1875, in November, in New York City, let's say one of her declared purposes was to bring the wisdom of the East, of India, and Tibet and of the Orient together with the wisdom of the West. And that only when this juncture was present could there be a real revival of the wisdom. And so, having made certain contacts in India, fairly soon after 1875, the two friends and associates, Olcott and Blavatsky, took off for India, where they established the headquarters of the Theosophical Society, where they made many important contacts and relationships with local wise men and also with the Maharajas and others, because when Blavatsky, for instance, just to indicate a little thing, when Blavatsky was seeking a seal, an emblem, a coat of arms for her new society, she designed, and I have a little one in the frame there that I painted in about 1974 or something like that with my mother's paints back in Austria when I first encountered it. But the motto that is attached to that emblem, Satya Nasti Paro Dharma in Sanskrit, means there is no faith higher than truth. And this was the motto of the Maharaja of Benares, whom Madame Blavatsky befriended, and when she designed the seal of her society, she asked His Highness the Maharaja if she could use his motto, and he said, anything you want. And so it is still there. It's in the upper row of the pictures there. But let us say now we need to bring these diverse strands together and see now how this messengership came to work. There are three elements that I gathered of Blavatsky's work that I would like to emphasize. Outwardly, and this was very important, the Theosophical Society that she founded was the first open public organization to teach the esoteric tradition, the tradition of universal gnosis, in our culture. Every other attempt prior to that was, if it did not start secretly, had to go into secrecy because of the controversies and the persecution that occurred. And so what we had in Western history were secret orders, secret associations. You couldn't just walk in like you happily did here. I hope you did it happily. In any event, but there was probably a guard at the door, and you had to probably give a secret handshake and had to communicate a secret password. You could come in, and the Martinist, Masonic, Rosicrucian, and earlier on other secret spiritual bodies all functioned that way. But the body of people who got together that November evening in New York and founded the Theosophical Society, Blavatsky told them that what they needed to organize was a completely open association to which anyone had access, and how far people progressed on the spiritual path was up to their efforts. And now we need to take a look at something else, which of course is still, you find it in all the encyclopedias and other reference works, that she put forth an impressive body of teachings in her writings, such as Isis Unveiled, The Secret Doctrine, The Key to Theosophy, A Modern Panarion, and others, that this was essentially a vast statement in verbal and intellectual terms of the tradition of the universal gnosis, and it served an important purpose. Now, what we need to keep in mind is that I am on the verge of contradicting myself by saying that these works that I just mentioned, and that are still regarded as her literary and occult heritage, were not, at least not completely, far from that, only in part what people made them out to be. It is, to this day, it is regarded that this is what she did, these books. Well, it's not really true. It is true because to a certain extent, because she did not live long enough to complete her mission. And what I'm telling you now are data that have come to light only within the last few years. The reason for that is because I will have the books with me probably next time. It has been, let's say, revealed in her own writings, which were not available until comparatively recently, and which however have been published now as the Secret Doctrine commentaries that she wrote as one, a great big thick book as might be expected, as one, and her Esoteric Teachings, a much smaller book, maybe in many ways really more comprehensive than the first one. And these works revealed that she regarded her own secret doctrine, and all the works that I just mentioned, she regarded them as exoteric works. These were books for the general public, which were to introduce people to the esoteric tradition, but these were not her real message. Now that's a big, that could become a big disappointment to thousands and thousands of people worldwide, because this is what we have read, this is what we memorized, this is what we worked with for so long. So what does this mean? Well, it means, of course, that she wrote these books, and sometimes under very strange circumstances. It's so easy for me to be diverted because I have occupied myself with these things for so long that there's always some story that comes up. But then I say, well, will this story be appropriate for us, right now? But let's put it this way. She simply stated that the books that she published, including the Secret Doctrine, were for for the general public. They did not contain her essential and true message. They were of an introductory nature, a way in which she, and now I am putting words in her mouth, and I'm sure that she would resent that. She probably would take one of her innumerable cigarettes which she rolled herself constantly, would take them out of her mouth and give me a piece of her mind. But let's say when I came across this information only a few years ago, I was really stunned. So I said, all right, then why were these books there? What is their nature and their character, their character? And then it came to me, and I have had corroborative evidence, let us say, that her published books, including the Secret Doctrine, are an introduction to her spiritual mission, and that introduction is largely mythological. Now, I'm not the only one who said this. If I ever need to refer to an authority, I can refer to one important theosophical leader who said that the Secret Doctrine is a myth. Every bit of it. Now you should say, well, what does that mean? Of course, if she had said that in those words at the time, nobody would have read it. Because in the 19th century mind, like that radio interviewer who interviewed Joseph Campbell, and who said to Joseph Campbell, why are you so interested in myths? Everybody knows that a myth is a lie. It's not something that is intellectually and physically true. But it is something that if you follow it attentively in your mind and add the necessary emotional power to it to really penetrate your nature, will stimulate certain deeper insights within you. When you read the sort of occult history of the Secret Doctrine, beginning with the formation of the cosmos, you see the stanzas of Zahn, which are a poetic work, were sort of the initial skeletal structure upon which the Secret Doctrine was built. And let's see how does it starts with the creation of a cosmos, the eternal parent wrapped in her ever invisible robes had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. This is how it starts. And then it goes how this mysterious eternal parent wakes up, and then out of it flow the various worlds and the universes and so forth. Really, if you don't want to read any other Blavatsky, read the stanzas of Zahn from the Secret Doctrine. They are very, very inspiring poetry. But what do they tell you? They tell you a creation myth. And what goes on after there, the various continents, the continent of Lemuria, the continents of Atlantis, of the Hyperborean continent, even the continents which were not even physical yet, and the mysterious beings that come into the world, and on and on and on and on. Why are they there? Because their story, if you allow it to penetrate your consciousness, but penetrate it not in an intellectual manner, in a manner of something to be memorized, in a manner of something that that you are now going to keep to mind. Well, yeah, then and then that, but there was the sinking of Atlantis, and there was this and that and the other thing. Making all of these things factual, if you do that, you make a great big mistake. So when after the publication, almost immediately after the publication of the Secret Doctrine, she came out quite openly in her instructions to her closest students to say, you know, don't go ahead believing what is in there. That's not the purpose. You know, don't allow something that is not meant to be factual to be factualized. Now, these are not her words. And forgive me, HPB, if I am putting words into your mouth again. But she did write this and say that the documentary evidence indicates. And so then you say, well, if it was not to be believed, then why is it there? What is it? Because by allowing your mind, your consciousness, your imagination, your vision to travel on these strange paths of the mind that Blavatsky put there, something is likely to happen to you. And it has happened to quite a few. I mean, I knew some people who said, who really caught on to it and said, you know, it's the spirit of the thing, it's the poetry of the thing, it's the feeling of the thing that matters, and that is exactly true. So when she said that this was written for the general public that would not be ready as yet for anything more, she said the truth. And so then, what was the real objective? We have enough material available about that now, and I hope to convey some of it in the coming lectures. But I can give you that much of a preview. Her purpose was to stimulate people for great internal change, for great internal transformation. Not to give them a new belief system, not to make them believe in Lemuria and Atlantis and the strange being that she described there. I mean, you know, that there are large parts of the Secret Doctrine, her own writing, not the stanzas of John, but her own writing, that would make the most terrific sci-fi stories that you ever want to or don't want to see. But of course, you tell that to my fellow theosophists and they might come and stone me, like in the Old Testament, you know. But it was for a purpose of introducing people into an imaginary realm that is wild and wonderful and incredible and terrific, and that stimulates your imagination, stimulates your internal visionary faculties to a point where you are receptive to maybe then to something more, something else. In other words, a preparatory work was necessary in order for her to give people more. All right, what happened to the more? Well, a little bit was there. She finished the Secret Doctrine, and then she almost died in Ostend in Belgium, where I didn't visit the house where she was because I didn't know about it at that time. I was only 16 years old. But in any event, she almost died at the time when she wrote the Secret Doctrine, but the doctors had given up on her. Just various little incidents in her life all indicate that there was a really different sort of person here. So in the morning she came out fully dressed with her cigarette, and said, Master came during the night and healed me, and now we can go on and finish the Secret Doctrine, And these things were written down by reliable people, particularly by the lady who was her helper at that time, the Swedish Countess Constance Wachtmeister, who was with her day and night, and she said, well, a tremendous change came over her at that time. So, strange things kept happening to her in her life. But she wrote the Secret Doctrine, she went to England, and then, of course, there was all the excitement, all the people were reading her books, and they were all around her. So she took off for France, and she had a friend there, the Lady Caithness, who was also the Duchess de Pommaren, who had a magnificent place in Paris, and there she wrote a little book, a little manuscript, and the manuscript is called The Voice of the Silence. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, and in the mind of some of the knowledgeable historians, that is a sample of what the additional message was like. And it's purely a mystical book. If you read it attentively and maybe several times over, I would say that in all likelihood, you will experience considerable transformations and changes in your consciousness, expansions of your consciousness. And she indicated to Lady Caithness and to others that this was the kind of thing now that she was supposed to do. And she got together her disciples whom she thought that might be more receptive, and she conducted the first one, and then she discontinued that, and let's say 2 sort of successive classes in what she considered to be what her true esoteric message was. Some of this material is now available, especially in a volume called The Esoteric Teachings of H.P. Blavatsky, and I will bring the books forth and will give you portions from it. But as a teaser and as an introduction, what all this is about is the heart and the kernel of the esoteric tradition, which is not teaching, which is not a set of rules, or don't eat meat and do this and don't do that, and all this sort of thing, but which is calling attention to the fact that there is a tremendous opportunity here while you are a human here in the body. And what is that opportunity? To come to the knowledge, the recognition, and the union with your true self. That's what it is really all about. And that all the mythologizing of the Secret Doctrine, and I see Unveiled is a delightful book too, and it is full of occult anecdotes. Again, it's very stimulating and very good reading, but those are sort of the way in which she makes the reader walk around the center and says, if you do right, if you continue, if you do the work within you, if you really devote attention to you, you can come to the center of the mandala, and then you are really going to know. And that is why she was so fond of the Gnostics, because she said, you know, folks, this is all about spiritual knowing. This is not about anything else. Now, unfortunately, while in the midst of this transition, in which she was trying to bring forth the real esoteric teaching, the real esoteric disclosure, primarily to this class and so forth, her body gave out and she died. Right on the, just over the edge from the 19th to the 20th century, she died. And so she could not continue with it. But let us say she left the raw material. She left she left the nourishment. She left the meal here, but somewhat uncooked. Okay, and it is up to those who came thereafter to continue the cooking of the meal and to really extract from it what she principally wished to do, because we have the irrefutable evidence now that she did not intend to merely write the secret doctrine. Merely, I mean, you look at all those volumes, you know. I have both the 3-volume edition and the 5-volume edition and all of those, but you know, that was not the purpose. The purpose was to somehow indicate and teach to people how they might become complete, how they might become whole, how they might accomplish what, of course, the magical tradition was around already, the path of the vision, the conversation with and the union with the transcendental self. That is what she came to teach people. Now, what happened? Well, what happened, of course, that poor dear died, and she, in fact, she was the first person, I think, in the British Isles, at least so it is made out, who was subjected to cremation. Her secretary and the great translator of Gnostic and Hermetic was G.R.S. Mead, and her friends made arrangements for her cremation, and G.R.S. Mead gave her funeral oration, and then subsequently her ashes were distributed between Adyar in India. She died on the 8th of May, incidentally, which in theosophical circles has been called White Lotus Day, but much of it is in Adyar in India, at the old headquarters, but owing to the fact that there were various theosophical groups who were sort of splitting off from each other and all of that, as far as I know, I haven't heard to the contrary, there is also a portion of her ashes in Altadena, California, with the other Theosophical Society, which is much smaller, but which received some of the ashes, and I just hope to all the Hindu gods and the and to Buddha and everybody else, that when that organization is very much on the decline, shall we say, when there won't be anybody there to take care of that, I hope that that portion of the ashes will be made available to the rest of us, because I think such relics are important. In any event, what happened, of course, was that not entirely, but let's say to a very large extent, the eventual Theosophical Society sort of split into two or three, but let's say the one that maintained the headquarters in India and all of that, subsequently her own places, it became to a very large extent a place of the teaching and the reverence of a belief system. When I joined the Theosophical Society in the 50s here, because I wanted to wait till I was in my later permanent habitat, namely the United States, you know, all you heard in this very room here, let us say, reincarnation, karma, and evolution. You know, that's not what Blavatsky was all about. Blavatsky said that you may, or would have said, you may contemplate those issues, and they are of some importance, and they might help you to constitute a world view. Again, a Weltanschauung, as the Germans put it, which then will be a good beginning toward your real work. But what you are here for is to become your real self, your divine and immortal soul, as she said. That is what you are here for. Everything else is either preparatory or irrelevant. You can, and of course it's so evident, because you can believe anything. But how about experiencing that which is behind all of the beliefs? But you know, having been in these circles for these many years, and really having encountered and made friendships with so many darling people, wonderful people, even those who were probably not as wise as I hoped, were still as good as I liked, namely my fellow Theosophists. I will be forever grateful to that band of followers that wouldn't go away, and that continued even after Blavatsky. And he said, look, we've got something really precious. We don't even know exactly what it is. We don't know exactly what to do with it, but we'll be here and we'll try to know and we'll try to do what we can. So they were a wonderful nucleus of spirituality. But I think now, after all these years, because of the historical changes, we have come to the point where we can really recognize what she was really here to do. She was here to show people that you can transform, you can become more than an ordinary human being by being united with your, which she has called by that name herself, your divine and immortal soul, your higher soul, yourself. And this is the task that is still before us. Now there are others who have come along who were familiar with her work, like C.G. Jung. Jung was a down-to-earth Swiss countryman, you know, in addition to everything else. He liked his pipe, he he liked his Swiss goulash and whatever was here, there, and everything else. But he, above all, was interested in the transformation of the human soul. And I have read probably almost everything published that Jung had written. I have never encountered a statement by him that was derogatory of H.P. Blavatsky, not one. But many of the rest of the occultists made nothing but mistakes. And as was implicit and explicit in Jung's statements, why? Because they made a system of belief and behavior out of her teaching. It's not what you believe. And it's not commandments. Oh, don't eat meat, don't smoke tobacco, which she did constantly. And she didn't give a hoot about meat or no meat either, and all sorts of things of that sort. And at the same time, you believe in reincarnation, you believe in karma, you believe in spiritual beings called the masters. These beliefs are not going to do anything for you other than perhaps if the learning process is correctly undertaken, they may prepare you for the great experience, without which life isn't worth really much. All the beliefs, all the philosophies, all the stories can be there, but if you have not come close to that strange and mysterious and ghostly, as the bad translation has it, that spiritual being that you really are, and that is within you, and that is guiding you, and that wants to come forth, and that wants to change you into its own expression and its own image, then it all was for naught. But I don't think that her mission as a messenger was for naught. She had a feeble and fallible body, which was subjected to terrible exertions throughout her life, and which caused many illnesses and so forth. And so she went from this earth earlier than she could complete her work. Now what does that mean? Somebody's got to complete it. Somebody's got to complete it. We owe that to her. We have to do what she really wanted to do. We have to be there and not mistake it for a bunch of teachings and for irrelevant memories of past lives in Atlantis or here or there, but to work toward the objective of our own transformation. Our own transformation into whatever you want to call it, the Nirmanakaya, the holy guardian angel of the magicians, and all sorts of other things. This is what she wanted us to do. There is absolutely no doubt about it now, and I'll show you some of the evidence subsequently. But there are others who in their own ways have said the same thing. Eliphas Levi has said it. C.G. Jung has said it. But she came and she made the major effort to create the conditions within which this would be possible. And so when you are so close to a subject, when you are so close to a person, when you have lived with the aura of this mysterious presence for so many years as I have, it's very difficult to talk about it. It's like it's like talking about your childhood and your own mother and things like that. It's really strange But I can tell you this much, that this was and still is a momentous presence who has given the entire world and 10,000 of people the impetus to look for the one thing that they should be looking for the spiritual treasure that is locked up within themselves, and to do whatever discipline, whatever activities of mind and soul are necessary to come close to that. And she has conveyed that determination and that desire in such a fashion that it is still with us. So Helena Petrovna, the daughter of Peter, who was her father, Peter Alexeyevich von Hahn, a Cossack colonel, in any event, is not gone. She is still here. She still wants people to do what she wanted them to do. She still wants to find, even if it's a small number of people, who can transform, who can change, who can open up the door within them where that mysterious presence, call it Buddha nature, call it the Christ in you, the hope of glory, call it what you will, resides. And where it knocks, is at the door knocking. Are we going to listen to the knock? Are we going to open up the door? Maybe we owe that to the heroic soul who has suffered so much and who has done so much and who wanted this to happen. Because that is the Theosophia which she took from Ammonius Saccus, the Neoplatonists. He's the one who came up with that word in Alexandria. This is the wisdom of the divine. And that wise divine is nearer to us than we are to ourselves. It is closer than hands and feet, and it knocks at our door. And she said, maybe I can help some people to open that door, because that is the purpose of their lives. It is the purpose of our life. So I hope I convey to you, at least at the level of feeling, a closeness to this incredible messenger, to this wonderful initiator and teacher, whose memory, not only whose memory, but whose work and whose intentionality is still with us. And as if we are mindful of that intentionality and keep close to it, then it will take us to the goal. It will take us to the goal that she pursued and found, and we can also pursue and found, because the conditions have not changed. We may have computers, we may have electronic this and electronic that, but it all is taking us outside of ourselves. But meanwhile, there is still something inside. Someone knocking says, do you hear me knocking? Are you going to help to open the door? If not, maybe you want to take a look at the old Russian woman. She wasn't that old, and she wasn't even 60 years old, who in her cigarette smoke knew what humans ought to do, what they must do, and who sacrificed everything that she could, including her life, to help them do it. Maybe we can still take advantage of that help. Maybe it will still work, because it has worked before in various ways to those who address them to it. And so I think the only worthy way in which I conclude this little rumination, because it was not very much organized, this little rumination is by saying that at least I am thankful. I thank Helena Petrovna for what she did. I thank her for the people whom she gathered around her. I help her that the inspiration that she continued to make available, and from which so many of us have profited. And in that thanks, I make a determination to try to continue in the direction of that mystery that she wanted to make available to everybody. The mystery of the true self, the mystery of the holy guardian angel, the mystery of the indwelling divinity of the Buddha nature, of the Christ in us, the hope of glory, because that is our objective, that is our destiny, and that is with the help of such messengers as she was and in many ways still is, we shall be able to accomplish. Thank you, Helena Petrovna. Thank you. Thank you.